boys and girls, it's time once again for reading workshop. Today I want to teach you that readers are not just tagging along behind the characters in their books on these adventures. They're also looking ahead and imagining what's next, what's going to happen next. So today I want to teach you that readers can predict what might happen next by thinking about what has already happened in the story. The word predict means to make a guess. And so there are some simple steps that readers can follow when they're predicting the text. They could read a few pages and stop and think, what's already happened? Then they predict what might happen next. And then they have to read to clarify or confirm what happened. Clarify means if a reader guessed something or predicted something and it did not happen in the text, they have to find evidence of what really happened, and that means to clarify it. Or they might have to confirm what happened. Let's say the reader guessed something and it really happened, then they could see evidence of that inside of the text. So today I'm going to do an example from the book of Curious George, written by H.A. Rey. And I'm going to practice these steps of predicting what might happen next. The first step is I'm going to read a few pages from the book. This is George. He lived in Africa. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. One day George saw a man. He had on a large yellow straw hat. The man saw George too. What a nice little monkey, he thought. I would like to take him home with me. He put his hat on the ground, and of course, George was curious. He came down from the tree to look at the large yellow hat. I'm going to reread the page very quickly. This is George. He lived in Africa. He was a good little monkey and always very curious. One day George saw a man. He had on a large yellow straw hat. The man saw George too. What a nice little monkey, he thought. I would like to take him home with me. He put his hat on the ground, and of course George was curious. He came down from the tree to look at the large yellow hat. Right here I'm stopping to think. What has already happened? So far I noticed that George noticed the man in the yellow hat. It got his attention. He was curious about the hat. Then he also noticed that the man put the hat down on the ground. And then he came down from the tree to look at the large yellow hat. So now I'm thinking, I'm going to predict what might happen next. So maybe you could help me predict this, and let's try this together. Maybe he might just look at the hat and climb back up into the tree. But then again, he's a curious little monkey. Maybe he will try on the hat to see if it fits him. So let's make a little guess about what will happen next. Whether we choose that he will try on the hat or he will just climb back up in the tree after looking at it, we have to figure that out in the next few pages. So let's see. Now we're going to read to clarify or confirm what happened. Before, I think he might just look at the hat, go back up in the tree, or maybe he might try on the hat because he's a curious little monkey. Let's see what happened. The hat had been on the man's head. George thought it would be nice to have it on his own head. He picked it up and put it on. The hat covered George's head. So right here in the text, we see that George actually picked up the hat and put it on. So one of the things I said happened. He picked up the hat and put it on. What did not happen was he didn't just look at it and climb back up into the tree. So I just did some confirming. I confirmed that he did put it on his head, and I clarified that, meaning it didn't happen. He didn't just look at it and then climb back up into the tree. Now, let's try this together in another part of the book. You're going to read a few pages, stop and think what has already happened, then predict what might happen next. And we will turn and talk with someone at home about it. Let's read. He couldn't see. The man picked him up quickly and popped him into a bag. George was caught. The man with the big yellow hat put George into a little boat, and the sailor rowed them both across the water to a big ship. George was sad, but he was still a little curious. Now, what's already happened here? We see the man called George and put him into a bag, and now they're in a ship and they're rowing across the water to somewhere. What might happen next? Turn and talk to someone at home. Then come on back. Now that you're back, you might have said that the man took George home, because early in the story, the man wanted to take George home. He thought about that. And then he might have taken him somewhere else. But let's see. If you said that the man took George home, then let's see if that happened. So here we're going to read to clarify or confirm what happened. On the big ship, things began to happen. The man took off the bag. George sat on a little stool, and the man said, George, I am going to take you to a big zoo in a big city. You will like it there. Now run along and play, but don't get into trouble. George promised to be good, but it is easy for little monkeys to forget. How? Let's see. What did happen? The man is planning to take George to a big zoo, not to his home. So before, some of you might have thought that he was going to take him home. But then, here in the text, we see that the man is telling George that he's going to take him to a big zoo. So what we must remember is that whether we are correct about what we predicted or not, we should always look for evidence of what really happened in the story. Now it's time for you to go and practice predicting what might happen next by thinking about what has already happened in the story. Read a chapter book on my own or Raz Kids. And remember to read a few pages, stop and think what has already happened, then predict what might happen next. Then read to clarify or confirm what happened. Off you go.